What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And today I'm bringing you another year in review for 2024. And this time it's Cage Warriors. And I'll be honest, I've been sitting here for the last few minutes. I'm thinking, how am I going to start this? Because we could get very samey, I suppose, with Cage Warriors at times. Because they just deliver. And maybe there's nothing wrong with that, right? Maybe there's nothing wrong with me repeating probably what I said last year. And me probably repeating what I said the year before, because that is the key to Cage Warriors. They just deliver and deliver and deliver. And it was funny. I usually have Brad on here, and I was racking my brain trying to think who should be the Cage Warriors fighter of the year. I always name my fighter of the year on whether it's for the Bellator or PFL or UFC or Cage Warriors, whoever it might be. And I was saying to Brad, like, Jesus, who do you think? He sent me a list. He sent me a list of about 5, right? And then he sent me a list. He sent me a list of 5, and underneath that were like a list of emerging, and there was probably another 5 there. And I'm thinking, I could pick. And actually, the one I was thinking of wasn't even on the list. So there's about 8 options who could be fighter of the year. And you know what? I haven't even decided yet. So I'm going to go through the cards here and decide. But the fact that in itself is true, or a conundrum. Now maybe some people think there's an obvious one, or maybe some people would have their favorite. And at the end we might all agree, you'd never know. But the fact that there are loads of options says a lot about somewhere like Cage Warriors, because if you think about it, the amount of turnover the Cage Warriors has to do is insane. Right, like in all promotions, new talent emerges, or you get in new talent, or they come from Cage Warriors sometimes. But like, let's say like in the UFC, over the last 6 or 7 years, let's say, right, there's been a lot of Habib was there, and then Makhachev, right? We had Nunes for most of that time. We had Shevchenko for most of that time. Obviously we had Stipe for most of that time up in the last while. We had John Jones for a very long time, and then we've had Alex Pereira and Adesanya for most of the time, and the top ones, and obviously people emerge. Holloway was for a long time, and if those people emerge in Cage Warriors, they're gone, right? Because we know the UFC are going to sign them up, and that's what Cage Warriors have signed up for themselves, and that's great. That's exactly what they are. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But the fact, imagine if UFC just lost all those fighters I talked about, and then had to replace them with equally good fighters. Now, okay, it's different. It's a different level, obviously, because you're not replacing champions with champions. You're replacing prospects with prospects. But the level of prospect that they're replacing the past prospects with is frighteningly good, and consistently frighteningly good. And if you look back at the cards, and we will from this year, some of the fights that they put on, some of the quality of the wins, some of the quality of the prospects have been astounding, considering, if you look at Cage Warriors over the last few years, there's 2 things that have happened to Cage Warriors over the last few years, right? They've lost a lot of their fighters to the UFC, which they always do, but then, there's been an emergence of European MMA over the last while. Obviously, with KSW have been there for a long time, but Octagon as well. And if you look at Octagon right now, or you look at KSW right now, there's a lot of Cage Warriors fighters there. Sam Creasy and Matters Flaminas and Donovan Desmay and Agi Sardari, and it goes on and on and on. And those were not just guys; those were top guys, right? So they lost those type of guys. They lost guys like Joe McColgan. They lost guys like Oban Elliott, Ian Gary, Paddy Pimblett. Even guys like Mason Jones and Justin Burlington, who went away and came back, or Reese McKee, Paul Hughes. It's already happening with the new branch, like Kennedy Freeman. Molly McCann. The list goes on and on and on. They lose those fighters and have to replace them. And the fact that they can do it over and over and over again is truly astounding. You could set your watch by Cage Warriors. And when we're reviewing the year, and obviously we'll go through the fights and we'll go through some of the fighters here, and we'll name the fighter of the year. But I think it's, sometimes it's easy to criticize too often in mixed martial arts, whether it's matchmaking or promotion and all. Now, I think Ian Dean doesn't get too much criticism because he's brilliant. And I think anyone who knows it knows he's brilliant. But there's like, obviously, Graham Boylan, look, he manages a lot of fighters. And he's promotion. It's obviously his promotion, and people are always talking about there's a double standard there and all, or a conflict of interest and all. And there is somewhat, but I've often asked who would do it if he didn't do it, like, and it's different in America and the UK and Ireland and stuff as well. Like, it's not like in America you literally can't do it like under law or whatever, whereas in the UK and Ireland you can do it. And I've often, like, if it wasn't for guys like Graham Boylan, or even like even here in Ireland, like John Kavanagh ran events before, the Team Rhino guys ran events, or the Cage Legacy guys, they have their own gyms and they run events. If it wasn't for guys like them, and there is a conflict of interest with all of them, like, where would it be? Where would the sport be? How would people put fights on? I think that's, it's a tough reality, but it is a reality at the same time. In the perfect world, could we just have promoters and managers and all that separate? Yes, absolutely. But I would say as well, and this is a tough thing for someone like me to say, because people probably expect me to criticize them, but I actually think they do a really good job of not giving like massive favoritism to like people who are signed to Graham Boylan and stuff. Like, I went through it before and I looked at some of the fights, like the likes of Paddy Pimblett and other people had. I'm like, Paddy Pimblett, they put him in there fucking Soren back and Nadan Armani, and he lost twice. Some of these lads are getting really tough fights. You never criticize the matchmaking of Ian Dean. So that's one thing I would definitely say. And Graham Boylan, I think, as well as Ian Dean, does a fantastic job. And the platform he gives to these lads is fantastic. Okay, do they earn a load of money there? Can they make a living off of this? Totally. No, absolutely. But that's, when people sign up, they know what they're signing up for. They're signing up for a platform to get to a place. Like, if people thought they were signing up for a lifetime here, I would speak very differently about it and think very differently about it. But that's not it. Now, if you want to be, a local European fighter and fight there for years as well, there's no problem with that. A lot of people have done that down through the years, and again, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But for the young up and coming guys to have a platform, and sometimes I like the likes of John Cavan and other people sometimes scoff at that. Oh, you're talking about a platform. It's just an easy way to underpay guys, and like, fair enough, if that's your prerogative, no problem. But it also is the best way to get there. All those people I named, they all got there, and it's it is a phenomenal part of the industry, that the fact that it can continue to do it. So with that said, before I get into the cards here, if I was to give a quick overall look at Cage Warriors, like, I would say it's been another very, very, very good year for Cage Warriors. Like, there has been a lot of younger guys coming through, and ladies as well, for that matter, who I've looked at and thought, oh God, is that prospect better than that prospect across the promotion, And when you're looking at, say a couple of guys on them, like a Sean Clancy Jr. or a Conor McCarthy. Let's just have those two guys for an example. Like, who's the better prospect? Who's going to be the bigger fighter, the better fighter at the end of it? I think that's tough to say. I think it is tough to say. And when that's, you look at, say, James Power, who had a setback and came back again. I think it's very, it's like, that's just amazing. That is really, really amazing. So let's get into it. Let's get into these cards. They started like a lot of promotions do a little bit later, March 15th. I mentioned this on a couple of these, but I always wonder why promotions don't go a little bit earlier, even if it's one show. Like, the start of January here, there's no shows until 13, 14 days into January. Like, I know it's tough to sell tickets just after Christmas and everything like that, but there's only one show. I think it's possible. So, right, let's get into the cards. Before I get into all of these, I'm just going to do the UK Irish cards here. I'm not, and European cards. Let's say I'm not going to do the American cards because I feel like that's a bit of a different promotion. Although there is a bit of crossover, but I'm going to leave them, and I'm going to leave obviously the Academy ones as well. So I think there's 14 if I'm not mistaken here, but we'll go through them. So it started off at 167, the Unplugged, and look, one of the best fighters of the year I think has been Stefano Paterno. He's looked absolutely fantastic. Again, looks like one of these real great prospects coming through, but at the same time he is a bit older and he's a bit more experienced. He went in there early, he beat Scotty Stockman, and the undercard here, it's funny, you look at some of the guys who came through, and a lot of them, and it tends to happen fight earlier in the year, like O'Meal Brown is going to be, he's moving down a weight now, I believe, as well, but he beat Rafael Aronov here. Shirzad Kadrian, what a year he had. Look, this guy looks absolutely amazing. He got an early finish here. Obviously, Michele Martinoni bouncing back after a tough 2023. Teddy Stringer, you know, all the guys, you know, are all triangle guys, and then the people in the know, I suppose, with the up and coming fighters. Say a guy like Teddy Stringer is one of those guys, you know, and Anthony Accorzo as well. I covered one of his cards a few weeks ago. This guy looks really, really, really good. Matthew Calamari as well won a fight here on the undercard. So that was how they kicked off the year. I suppose that was an Unplugged card. The big card, I suppose, was Cage Warriors 168, which went down on March 16th in Manchester. And this had the light heavyweight title fight between Andy Clamp and Matty Byfield on it. I think this one probably went a little bit longer than a lot of people thought. Went into the third round, but Andy Clamp ended up winning it. And like this guy, and we'll talk about what happened to him later in the year, but at this stage, like, he's a really good athlete. Again, a little bit older and a few more fights than a lot of people in Cage Warriors, but this is a guy who is very, very well rounded, and a guy who also, you would think, you know, at this stage anyway, or you think maybe if he can get one or two wins, Cage Warriors division, the UFC light heavyweight division isn't the most stacked in the world. He could get a move over there very quickly after beating Matty Byfield, who's a good prospect. He's 6-3 now, but he's fought some good guys to get to 6-3. I wouldn't talk that down too much. Demi Luke Riley against John DeJesus. If you haven't seen this fight, you should watch it. Like, Luke Riley's one of those guys who's in contention for Fighter of the Year. He'd an unbelievable year, and this guy is he's a real beast. Obviously, you know, he's going to be over in the UFC pretty soon, and he has taken Cage Warriors by storm. Obviously, out of Paddy Pimblett's gym as well. If you don't know that name, get to know it, because you'll know it a lot more over next while. Like, what I love about Luke Riley is I think he's improving an awful lot, and he's a better striker, I think, than Paddy, more natural, but I think, you know, Paddy, it was obvious what Paddy needed, I suppose, to add to his game. What Luke Riley needed to add to his game is just a bit better in all areas and get better and better defensively. And I think over the course of the year, I think he has. So, you know, he's a top prospect. I have an awful soft spot for James Power, who he won here against Ijanoui Jiraka. And obviously he had a bit of a setback the year before, ended up losing a fight, but he's bounced back beautifully this year. And he's, you know, and again, another guy who could be Fighter of the Year. He's absolutely fantastic. There was another title fight in this actually as well. Liam Gittins beat Roberto Hernandez for the bantamweight title, and like, Liam Gittins is, again, I think he won my Fighter of the Year last year, if I'm not mistaken, didn't he? But Gittins has, you know, again, a beast at 135. Maybe a guy a few years ago who people wouldn't have said would become a champion, but by God did he. So yeah, very good there. And then Michelangelo Lupoli as well beat Sheldon Ryan on the undercard in this one. It was on to London then for 169, and Jordan Vucinic. Like, you talk about Cage Warriors fighters over the last few years, and you know, obviously Paul Hughes and Jordan Vucinic, that rivalry was amazing, but how good are those two guys? Like, obviously Paul Hughes has gone to where he's gone to now, but Jordan Vucinic is just, he's such a good fighter. Like, this guy is a beast of a fighter. And, you know, Simone Diana kind of, he stayed there for a while. You wouldn't have expected to maybe go that long, but the way that Jordan Vucinic took him apart, and he takes apart a lot of fighters, absolutely fantastic. We talk about prospects, and probably the best prospect to emerge out of Cage Warriors this year is probably Lonnie Kavanagh, in terms of, like, emerging. I'll be honest, I saw this fight against Sean Da Silva and I was like, Ian Dean's got this one wrong. And I was picking Sean Da Silva. I was like, no, he's too old, he's too experienced. He doesn't have a lot more fights than Lonnie. Sean doesn't have that many, but this guy is really good. And, Lonnie, I think if you give it 3 years, Lonnie will be... And what happens? Kavanagh goes in and takes him apart. I think, was there 10-8s involved and all that? God almighty, he was brilliant. Obviously, he's gone on to the contender series after this, and he's an absolute beast is Lonnie Kavanagh, and this I suppose was the start of it for 2024. Will Curry got back to winning ways in, obviously, another one of those guys who's maybe flattered deceives at times, but everyone knows like his ability, and everyone knows you just have to look at him and see this guy is a beast. And it was a wonderful retirement for him at the end of the first round, doctor stoppage, but good for Will Curry to get back. And you had some guys on like Ali Sanatani, Thomas Paul, just good solid pros in there getting wins in this card as well. Amir Maliakpour, another guy you could put into that as well. And Joanny Scott. We're talking about prospect. Jesus, I feel like I'll do this in every card, but this Joanny Scott, he is do you remember that name, Joanny Scott? An absolute beast of a prospect. This guy is really, really, really good, and he got a win here as well. Dinner was Cage Warriors in Ireland, and my namesake James Sheehan ended up winning the title here, beating Daniel Conrad. A tough fight, blood all over the place, and James Sheehan ended up getting the stoppage in the fourth round here via arm triangle choke. A brilliant fight, and it's hard for me not to give James the fighter of the year, to be honest. An Irish guy called Sheehan, he is the champion. This was one of the fights of the year, one of the performances of the year. We'll see at the end, but he's definitely up there. I think that might be too much bias though if I did that. But I must say, with James Sheehan, so James fought Ian Gary when they were both 0-0. They were both very young in their careers anyway. And then James fought, he fought oh God, the name escapes me. I could pull it up here, but he fought another Cage Warriors champion, and he was like, what was he? He was 1-2 at the start of his career, but anyone that looked at him, God, this guy's a beast. This guy's a really good fighter, and he's shown that. Went on an unbelievable winning streak. He's 8-3 now, but again, and the other losses to Oban Elliott. So like the 3 losses are to 2 Cage Warriors champions, and Oban Elliott, one of the top prospects coming through in the UFC now. This guy is a real beast, real technical. But also, the one thing I would say about James Sheehan is I think the physicality is probably a little bit underrated by him. And underrate that at your pearl. Definitely underrate that at your pearl. With Paul Hughes in this card as well, some people might forget. Paul Hughes obviously came through Cage Warriors this year and has gone on to be a PFL number 1 contender. It's crazy the fact that he was in 2024 still fighting for Cage Warriors, and he ended up fighting AJ McKee, and as I said, now fighting for a title. Absolutely insane. And it was a good night for the Irish. Ger Harris, Teki McAleenan, Solomon Simon. What a year Solomon Simon had. Like this guy, I've watched Solomon Simon since he was a 2 or 3 fight amateur. And green as grass. He's come through and he's had about 30 amateur fights, and now he's 5 fights into his pro career, and I'd say he's probably next in line, or if maybe 1 fight away from fighting for the title in 2025. This guy is an absolute beast. Emer Darcy, another woman coming through here in Ireland, very young in her career, but looks a top prospect. Matthew Elliott, a beast of a wrestler. His striking looks improved as well. So there's others like Jamie Abbott Bissett, and Ryan Shelley got a win here as well. So good night for the Irish overall. A couple of losses in there as well, but overall a good night for the Irish in Dublin. Then they moved on to Glasgow. Not as good a night, I would say, for the Scots here. Chris Bungard ended up losing for the in the lightweight main event to Dimitri Grelian. And Reece McEwen lost in the co-main event to Cameron. So that was tough. But Sean Clancy Jr., again, spoke about Sean, like this guy, another guy, you need to remember that name, Sean Clancy Jr. I think he's one of the top athletes I've ever seen coming through here. Now, that doesn't mean anything, right? But he looks so good. He's a crazy family and fan base around him and all, which I'll be honest, I think probably need to cool down a bit and let him become the fighter he can become. But he can become a great fighter. He is really, really, really good. But there's other lads stood out here as well. Nicholas LeBlanc, Keir Harvey, Dan Jewis got a good win, obviously former title challenger, as well as a few others coming through there. We'll move on to the Newcastle card, and like the north, is it east or west? East of England has been really good over the last while, and obviously Harry Hardwick, the featherweight champion now after beating Orlando Brins, and his brother, the lightweight champion. Those two lads have been talked about for a very, very, very long time. You know, we had other lads before like Cal Eleanor and others, and maybe didn't get to that level quite, but Hardwick's absolutely have. And, you know, Harry's got a great stoppage there. Obviously, George Hardwick tried in the Contender Series, ended up losing, and he's back again. But I'd be surprised if those lads didn't eventually make it there. But I think they're good cagers for the moment. I think I think there's another card coming up in that part of the world. Put the two of them on it, absolutely massive. But, you know, the prospects on this card as well. James Power was on it. I mentioned already James. He beat Daniel Kolansky in this card, who's, you know, a tough guy, been around for a while. Kennedy Freeman won here as well. Leon Hill is a real good prospect. Jason Blair coming over from America. He's one of Paddy Pimblett's training partners. But Aidan Lee, Michael Chamu, you know, Joe Fields, Charles Joyner, Jordan O'Neill as well. If you haven't seen this Jordan O'Neill guy, he's an Irish guy coming through, looks a real top prospect too. So there's so many of them. We move on to the London card, and Shirzad Qadrian beat Alexander Loof here in the main event after the tournament. He beat Wesley Maya earlier on after Loof beat Stephen. And I would be honest, I thought he was probably the outsider in here. He'd lost before to Maya, I believe, and ended up winning this fight and then beating Loof. And Loof looks like Loof has been around for 10 fights now in his career and is a real solid kickboxer. But Qadrian came through here and won this. It was absolutely fantastic for him. Jordan Vucinic also on this card ended up getting a quick finish and signed for the UFC straight away after. Probably the best prospect matchup of this year, I would say, Joanny Scott against Ger Harris. Joanny Scott looked phenomenal in this. Wasn't Harris's best performance, but, you know, I think a lot of that was down to Joanny Scott as well. The way he performed so good. So, you know, a fantastic performance from Joanny Scott. There's no doubt about that here. Then James Webb up at light heavyweight, looking an absolute beast. He got a very good win on this card as well. Nick Bagley beat Ryan Shelley. Like, Nick Bagley, to me, probably the most improved guy in Cage Warriors over the last couple of years. It looked absolutely fantastic here. And then, you know, Georgi Grozev again out of Paddy Houlihan's gym. Looks really, really good. There was a big long card there. Nicholas LeBlanc won. Riri Hudson looks a good prospect as well. She won here. Nima Darcy again picked up another win, as did Matthew Elliott. Then on to Manchester, and a very interesting fight, Dario Belandi against Robin Roos. You know, this guy is just a cardio machine. He doesn't look it, but he is, and he called for the UFC afterwards. You know, Roos is a talented kickboxer, and got dominated a lot in this fight, but never gave up either. Went 5 whole rounds. I think probably one of the most high level Cage Warriors fights we've ever seen was the co-main event here, Mason Jones against Michele Pagani. This Pagani guy is a real beast. I know I've said that about a lot of guys here, but he went toe to toe with Mason Jones. I actually picked him to beat Mason Jones. That's how good I think he is, and he could have won that fight. There was a couple of moments in that fight where he kind of made mistakes, and on another day you see where he zagged, and he could have won that fight. But Mason Jones again looks like, he's obviously another guy who we could talk about as for the fighter of the year here, and maybe he is after that win, but we'll figure that out at the end. Adam Cullen, a tremendous guy coming through. He beat Samuel Blasco. Stefano Paterno again, I talked about him at the start. He had a great win. Ewan Davis had a great win here as well. Callum Parker, he looks like a fantastic prospect coming through. Dylan Hazan getting back in the winning column here as well. And Teddy Stringer, I mentioned him earlier on. Very good win. Then we move on to September, up to Glasgow. This was where there was a bit of controversy. Another of the tournaments here, and they have. So let me get this straight now. They have 6 people, and then they draw 3 fights, and there's 2 semi-finals and then 1 backup fight. And unfortunately for Glasgow, Sean Clancy Jr., who I talked about earlier, Glaswegian fighter, or Scottish fighter, is he Glaswegian? I think he is, was drawn in the reserve bout. And the whole of Scotland went insane because of this. He won his fight, but he didn't end up in the tournament. O'Meal Brown ended up in the tournament, fighting in the main event, beating Bonara Kamara. And as I said, he's back into a place now where a lot of people are talking about him. George Hardwick again won the co-main event here against Christian Yorga, who's a good fighter. Went all 5 rounds on maybe a little bit of a longer night than maybe he would have expected. So yeah, like Reese McEwen got back to winning ways here. Keir Harvey got a win as well. You know, Sean Clancy, just to mention him again. So the Scots had a bit of a tough run of it this year, maybe. There was an unplugged card then. Chase and Blair was the main guy on that. I suppose he won the main event there, but Michael Chamu also got a win on it before they moved on to Manchester again. And Luke Riley was the main event and got a quick finish here over Alessandro Santos de Santos. Just knocked him out. Looked absolutely fantastic here. And again, Luke Riley, Mason Jones, who I don't know, I still don't know who it's going to be this fighter of the year. But yeah, Ewan Davis again got a good win here. It was very, very active this year. George McManus, good to see him getting back to winning ways with Darrow Ward's good Irish prospect coming through, but it was George's night there. That was, what happened? Something weird happened to that one that I can't really remember. Was there like a submission or a tap or something? Like, I'd have to go back. There was I did a whole podcast on that, I remember, about 30 minutes, and I can't remember what happened. But anyway, and there was controversy in that one. Someone remind me in the comment section below what happened. Like I've been watching too many fights this year. But the last couple of cards in the year, November, they were in Rome, and again Paterno won here. Like, this guy must be close to being in line now again. He looked great. Constantino in Tellus, I gave him as one of my picks this year as well. He beat Patrizi. This guy is a beast of a fighter. I really, really like him. A lot of people talking about Kadim Dia. Solomon Simon beat Walter Cogliandro here. This was one of the performances of the year, no doubt about it. Beating a guy who's 25 fights into his career, and he's only 5 fights into his career. Really, really, really good performance then. And a lot of the Italians came through. Teddy, Lupoli, Scogna, and a few more as well. So good year there. And then Conor McCarthy, one of the best Irish prospects coming through out of Peter Queeley's gym. Looks a real prospect, and he made his Cage Warriors bow on this one. And in Cage Warriors 180 in London, James Webb got the win over Andy Clamford, light heavyweight title. And this was maybe the feel-good fight of the year. Like, James Webb, a guy who's had it tough. You know, he was the champion at 185. Got beaten, was on maybe the verge of the UFC, had his chance again, didn't take it, and comes up to light heavyweight, and you're thinking maybe that's going to be too big, too much of a move. But he's looked phenomenal since he came up. I honestly, I thought Andy Clamp, like, Andy's going to be faster, bigger, but no, James Webb looked phenomenal. He could have won this fight a few times, to be honest. I thought at one stage he made a couple of mistakes against Ziggler, he should have zagged type of thing again, but no, in the end he got through it. And what a performance. This was, I would say, a performance of the year. If I was to give a KJR's performance of the year, I'd say this is probably an absolutely unbelievable by Team KF's James Webb. So brilliant performance for him. Nick Bagley again, like, if I was to give the smoothest fighter of the year, it'd probably be Nick Bagley. Looked real good. Paddy McCurry, after coming back off a tough, got a lovely win here, one of the knockouts of the year. Maya and Luff took on, the third, fourth place playoff in the tournament. And Maya, kind of surprisingly to me, I'll be honest, came out on the winning side there. Joanny Scott again won. It's hard to say Joanny Scott's not the prospect of the year coming through, although Solomon Simon might have something to say about that. But, Josh Anwardy got a good win there over Joe Ambler as well. And then the last card of the year, up in Newcastle again, Harry Hardwick won against Kwani Lopez. Kennedy Freeman won, and she's off now to the UFC after there. But, Justin Burlinson, he's going to be fighting James Sheehan now for the title. He got a good submission win there. James Power again, my guy James Power. Sean Clancy Jr. This is like prospect of the year watch on this card. So, Mike Chamu got another good win there as well. A fantastic card to close out the year. And at the end of the year, the champions, Kennedy Freeman obviously going after the UFC. Shaz Hack, who did he maybe fought one of the cards I missed out. I think he had one fight this year, but he got a year ravaged. I think he had injuries and stuff with Liam Gittins. Harry and George Hardwick, James Sheehan, Dario Belandi, and James Weber, the champions. And you know who's the? It's not often we give the fighter of the year to someone maybe who isn't the champion, but hold on. Let me contact my list again. So the guys that I'd be looking at, definitely Nick Bagley and Sean Clancy, definitely Quadrian, definitely James Power, Luke Riley, Mason Jones, Harry Hardwick. I'll be honest, like I think Sean Clancy Jr. is still a prospect. I don't think he's the top fighter of the year. I think Nick Bagley maybe it will be a similar thing, and I'd nearly say the same about Quadrian. I think James Power's probably fought better fighters before, so I'd put it between Hardwick, Riley, and Jones. Do you know what? I'm going to give it to Luke Riley. People say I hate Liverpool, but no, I'm going to give it the 2024 Cage Warriors Sheehan Shaw Fighter of the Year is Liverpool's own Luke Riley. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Look forward to more Cage Warriors in 2025. I'll see you all next time.